Welcome to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
This episode is brought to you by PowBox. HIPAA-compliant email should not be complicated for you or for the people that you're emailing. That's the whole premise behind PowBox. Encryption happens automatically, nothing lands behind a portal, and you keep using the inbox you already have. I run my own group practice on it now, and I'm finally back using Gmail, which I already know and love. If you're a practice owner thinking about how you handle secure email, or you're tired of the tool you're on now, the details will be in the show notes with an exclusive deal for our listeners. Welcome back to the Therapist HQ podcast, your weekly private practice pep talk. My name is Alicia Murray. As always, I am so glad that you're here. And today we are so lucky to be joined by Kelsey Kehoe, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over 15 years in private practice. She has previously served as a clinical director at a local domestic violence agency and now works as a clinical supervisor and private practice mentor to therapist moms. She's also a mother of 2 boys, and she brings that lived personal experience into the work she does, helping other therapist moms build practices that actually fit their lives. What a perfect fit. Kelsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, you've been in private practice for over 15 years.
Yes.
What did that path look like for you? You know, going from a clinical director at a DV agency to where you are now must have been such a big shift. So walk us through what that looked like and felt like.
It was quite a path and a journey. I got licensed when I was pregnant with my oldest, and he now is almost 16. Right when I got licensed, I started my private practice. So I actually started in private practice, not as a clinical director. And I was in my private practice for about, 9 years. And then I had my second son, and the DV agency that I did all of my hours with, they reached out to me because they needed some support and they wanted to know if I'd be an interim director. And I was kind of at that point where I was coming back from maternity leave with my second. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to still do my private practice, but this was such an amazing opportunity. And so I decided to do kind of like 50-50 private practice while then I was doing the interim clinical director. And then I ended up taking it as a full-time position because once I was in there and working with all of the clinicians and all the clients and just kind of back in my old stomping grounds, it really felt like a great fit for that season of life. It was amazing. And it only lasted about 2 years though. So in complete honesty, because I realized for me, private practice was really where it was at. Just the autonomy and the flexibility, 2 young kids, and what was required of me as a clinical director, just within that system, did not work for the life I was trying to create. So I then went back to my private practice.
I'm so glad to hear you talking about that because I feel like so often, especially just in therapist communities, I see therapists saying like, has anybody ever left their private practice to go back to work for groups or agencies? Like, what is that like? And I've seen some comments of folks like, yes, I left and then I came back. And I think looking back on it as like, this is just what I needed at the time was to make that transition. And it brought me, back to my practice, which it sounds like your practice remained established and was, a semi-easy transition to go back into. And I just think it's important to normalize that that's okay to do, to like step away and then step back to it if it feels like that's right at that time.
Yes. And actually, let me back up for a minute because when I did leave the clinical director position, I actually took like a 2-year sabbatical and moved to Costa Rica with my family. I don't want to forget about that, right? And so, so I still had a handful of private practice clients that I was seeing while I was a clinical director because I couldn't quite let that go. But then I had an opportunity to move my family down to Costa Rica, and I took it because my youngest was 2, and then my oldest was 8. I might not be doing the math right at this point, but I knew if we waited too long, it'd be disruptive for them educationally. And so we took the leap and we were down there, and I actually saw some clients just kind of through like a sort of like a life coaching lens, some expats down there. So I still had my feet wet there. And then we moved back in 2020. So I basically started my private practice from scratch a second time, which was really amazing and cool. And I was already established in the community. So a lot of people already knew me, and quite a few of my old clients came back because, they wanted to do that. And then I just rebuilt it, talking about taking time and like checking in with what works for your life and then kind of coming back full circle.
What was it like? I'm totally going like off script here because
Yeah.
I just have so many questions.
Yeah.
What was it like rebuilding the second time compared to the first time? Like, does anything stand out to you?
Gosh, I mean, it was in the height of COVID. So it was really scary all around, just, not knowing what was going on in the world and in our communities. And then just taking that leap from being on the beach all day, every day, to then in an office and rebuilding and needing to make an income and kind of feeling like I needed to hustle a little bit, but also not wanting to burn out, because when I left the clinical director position, I definitely was really burned out. It just did not work for my system. And so I think like rebuilding it the second time, I knew a lot more of what I needed to do. Like when I started back, over 15 years ago, I had no roadmap. I had no guidance. I did not know what I was doing. And so I was just like blindly going along and taking any client I could get, taking a lot of different insurances. And so the second time around, I just had a lot more time under my belt and a lot more experience. And so I was able to set better boundaries, even though it was in a really crazy time in the world.
What an incredible like background and experience to have and to bring to the table. And I know that we talked about really focusing on the therapist and mom sort of conglomeration of a role because it's such, I think, a delicate balance and one that so many are dealing with in some shape or form, especially if you're also balancing the private practice and that has sort of led you to, I would say, this like niche of wanting to work more with therapist moms.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a lived experience for me that like, I think the way I really show up in my work and in this work in particular in helping therapist moms is like, I have lived every single step of this. Like, I know what it's like to come home at the end of the day and not have enough left for my children and to take those deep breaths in the car and wipe my eyes and leave all the clients behind and walk through the front door and then just be mauled by children and needing me in every direction. And really knowing what we need to do to preserve our own sanity and to create the life that we really want and the way we want to show up. Because I have fumbled and fallen and fell in the trenches with this. And so I really want to help moms not necessarily do that, because I think that's part of motherhood and part of being a business owner, but making it a little bit softer and making it not as difficult as maybe the beginning of my journey was.
Yeah. And this is, I know, one of my favorite things to talk about too, because I feel like it's hard for people to talk about that messy part of, owning a business, being a therapist. I mean, being a therapist even without the business part of it, and being a mom. And like you said, coming home and it's just chaos. It's normal chaos, but it's just chaos, especially, depending on the kids' ages and stages and how many kids you have and like what time of day you're coming home. There's so many factors that can go into like what kind of chaos awaits you when you get home. And I think people tend to steer away from those conversations because we want to look like we have it all together. We have our family together. We have our kids together. But at the end of the day, kids are kids and kids are going to kid. And I think controlling ourselves, like you're saying, and setting our routines and schedules and things like that is what is within our control, because so much of kids is not in our control.
Exactly. Yes. And, I work a lot with kids and teens in my own practice. And so regulating other children and in my practice are teaching parents how to do that, and even regulating adults, right? And then needing to regulate myself, obviously in session so I can show up for clients, but then needing to walk through the front door regulated. And in all honesty, it doesn't always happen that way, right? Because it's a lot. It's a really big load that we carry.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of carrying those loads, what kind of invisible load have you seen or even experienced in terms of a therapist, mom in private practice? Like, what does that look like and feel like for people?
I mean, it is so heavy at times and it is absolutely invisible, right? Like we talk about the invisible load that moms carry just to begin with, right? So we have that as our foundation, knowing when we're going to make those appointments, calling the doctors, ordering the pizza at Costco so you can go pick it up for the soccer party or whatever it is, planning dinner in your head, making sure your kids are regulated, their clothes are bought, all the things, right? That we hold as moms just in general. that no one talks about, that even if our partners are like, how can I help? It's like, well, can you get in my head? And can you know that you need to schedule that doctor's appointment? I mean, you have to be like a personal assistant to tell them what they need to do, right? So we have that load. And then as a therapist, we then hold all of our clients' experiences as well, and even though, I mean, I feel like I have really good boundaries and that's something I've had to work with and that I also help therapist moms with and building their practices, it's still, there's those clients that stay with you, or those clients that you need to be thinking about a little bit more, needing to check in with. And at the end of the day, those clients that are a little bit heavier on your heart, or maybe there's crises or safety planning that needs to be done. I mean, all of those things, right? Coordinating care with other providers. I mean, there's this whole other load of being a therapist. Like, we don't only have to hold on to our children and ourselves and our partners, but we need to hold on to our clients and create that safety and that support for them. And then you add owning a business, right? And, all of your notes and your taxes and scheduling and all of those things. It's completely invisible. Some days I feel like I'm an octopus juggling like fireballs or something. And other days it feels a lot easier. So it's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you have explained it so well of like, nobody knows these things are going on inside. Like our partners may try to help us, if we have like virtual assistants or any administrative staff in our practice may try to help us. But even taking those things out of our brain and putting them somewhere else is another task. So it can almost feel like, oh no, it's fine, I'll do it myself. Like, it's almost gives us the idea that that's easier. And I think those are very hard habits for anybody to break out of, regardless of their experience as a therapist, a family therapist, whatever they may be. So carrying all of these invisible loads, lots of things, lots of balls being juggled. Where are you typically seeing therapist moms in particular burning out the fastest? Like, what do you think is driving that or contributing to that the most?
Well, I think as women and as moms, we literally can carry all of that. Like, we can carry that, and we do. And just because we can doesn't mean we have to, right? And so I think where therapist moms end up running into some roadblocks, especially earlier on in their careers, is they just take it all on. Just because they have the capacity to do it doesn't mean that they need to make that be everything that they're holding, right? And so where they'll like take on extra clients, someone will need to be fit in, and so they'll see 7 clients in a day, or they'll stay late and they'll see someone at 6 or at 7, or they'll do a crisis call on the weekend, or even go in on the weekend and see someone, even though that doesn't work with their life and that adds more stress. They feel like they need to take people in at a certain rate because that's what people are coming in at, and they're not really charging what they're worth. And so they're seeing more clients and not making enough. And that burnout factor is really, really hard, And when you add all of those things on, and then you go home and your kids are exhausted and needing more and more from you. So I think setting up kind of what you want your life to be like and what things really are like non-negotiables in your life and within your family is like the number one step in what I try to teach. And then your practice comes after that. But I think in the beginning, we're just like, we take every client that comes, I like to say now, like when I have new clients call, I have like this spidey sense of like, okay, this person's going to be a little bit more work, or this person has higher needs than what I have the capacity to do right now. Not that I don't have the clinical skills to treat them. It's more like what I have already on my plate. I know this client's going to need more than what I can give or want to give right now. And so then I refer them out. But as a new clinician, we just take everyone that comes, and that ends up burning people out really quickly, I've found.
I wish I could put a sticky note on everyone's desk that said skills versus capacity, because I'm with you on that conversation of like, no, I know that we can do this, but should we be doing this? Like, it's not a measure of our ability and of our clinical skills and of, at work or at home. It's just, do we have the space? Do we have the capacity? Like, is this fitting into our life right now? And, if it doesn't, not taking it as this personal or professional blow, which I think naturally so many of us just do without even thinking.
Absolutely. I think I just did a post earlier today about imposter syndrome, and just
So
it's
good.
because we feel things so deeply and we want to do well at them. And so if we end up falling behind or feeling overwhelmed, we end up feeling like we can't do it or we're not good enough. And really, that's not the case. It's just we're expecting ourselves to do too much, and it's about something we really care about. So how do we create margin so that we can do things and do them well and feel good about it?
Do you think it's that a lot of therapists who are also moms fall into being people pleasers, or do you think we're just trying to do it all? Like, what do you think is behind all of that?
I mean, that's a great question. I think for me personally, absolutely being a people pleaser,
Yeah.
like that is number one. And, not all women are people pleasers, but I think as women, we are conditioned to be people pleasers. This is like our role in society. And if we are not a people pleaser, then there's something wrong with us and we're a little too rough or not as, feminine or not as gentle or motherly, I think is a load of, what. And so we have to really like fight against that. And we can still please people and still be kind and compassionate, but that doesn't have to be part of our identity. And this is me like 43 years later, like being able to say this out loud. Like you asked me 10 years ago, it would have been a very different story. So it's definitely been a journey for me in realizing that I don't have to be a people pleaser. But I think a lot of women, that's where the angle that they come from.
Love how you said conditioned to be people pleasers. So it's like whether we, lean into that or lean away from it, I do think that there is this sort of natural ingrained element, like you said, of, this is your default. This is what you should be doing. This is how you should be acting. This is like all these things that you should be tackling. And so it takes a lot, I think, like you're saying, of experience and courage to go against that and say no and set the boundaries and all of those things that I think can make us look mean or that we don't care or that we're not nice. And I mean, naturally, nobody wants to be seen that way.
It's such a difficult thing, and being a woman in business, and I have clients that are women who have, pretty high stake jobs where they're, managing a lot of people, and the flack that they get when they set strong boundaries. And we talk all the time about if they were a man, it would just be a very different reception that they would get.
Yeah.
And so it's another part of our invisible load that we carry, and we don't want to make people upset. And so naturally, by setting firm boundaries might make people upset, but that's their experience, right? And we need to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Do you feel like through this process, you've had any beliefs about doing it all, being it all, that you've had to really kind of let go of or quiet in order to make your career and your business sustainable?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. I think I've always felt like I needed to do more. Just as self-disclosure, I have ADHD and I was late kind of diagnosed in early college. So I think growing up, I always felt like I had to like do more and try harder. And I really did have to try harder than a lot of people. And always feeling like I was behind. So I think it's kind of been part of my experience coming into being a business owner and really recognizing like what systems I need in place to make my life easier, knowing like where I can cut things out, where I need to add extra support, and really being able to ask for help, and really just knowing like how my brain and body processes things has been really helpful, and really getting to know like what works for my system, what clients do I need to have during the day, and knowing my load. Okay, these 5 or 6 clients, these go really well together. Where then the next day, maybe a tougher client paired with some clients that I have been seeing longer, or their experiences are different. And just knowing that I can do that and create that space and capacity has been a game changer.
You bring up such a good point about those sort of boundaries and expectations is so personal. Like, I think it's very hard to give black and white cookie cutter advice on like, these are the things you hire out and these are the things you have boundaries around. So what kind of things would you say for somebody who's a therapist and a mom, owns a private practice? Like, what should they be sort of looking at or assessing to recognize where to set these boundaries and where to ask for help and things like that?
Just to back up with even like first figuring out what they want their day to look like. Like what is what are the most important things that they need? Do they want to be able to take their child to school? What kind of a lunch break do they want? Like, are they picking their child up from school? How many clients are you seeing in a day? Like, just even having your ideal schedule in mind and then building around that versus saying like, okay, I've got 8 hours that I can cram clients in and then I'll figure out the rest. And then you're like, I didn't get a chance to go pick my kid up from school, or I can't make it to their soccer practice. So definitely like figuring out what your ideal day or week looks like with your family in mind. And then, seeing where like you need the most help too. If you have a difficult time with billing or software management, like that kind of thing, or even like building your own website. So for me, and I'm very creative. Like I loved doing my own website. Other people, like that might be like the last thing they want to do. And so, knowing what your strengths are and being able to like identify where you can give some of those things away. And also knowing what things are non-negotiables. Like these are just things that you have to do yourself as your own business owner. So whether that be you're doing your own taxes or you're having someone else do it for you, what kind of electronic system you're using and how easy it is to use, or online bookings, that kind of thing. And I think for a lot of therapist moms starting out, that just feels so overwhelming. Like, where do you even start,
And you bring up such a good point around, I think we throw around this term of like, your business should work around your life and your business should work for you. And it's like, well, what does that really mean in practice, right? Like that sounds really nice, but how do we apply this in practice? And I think you hit the nail on the head with the scheduling first and foremost. And it's so funny. That's like something I feel like I bore people with is you have to do this seemingly boring stuff first of what are your goals out of this whole thing? And what do you want your day-to-day to look like? We'll get to the money piece. We'll get to the client acquisition piece, but to be sustainable and to really live up to this, I'm going into business to work around my life. Like you have to have that recognition of what that feels like in practice and what you want that to feel like. And I think it's like a new sensation for people because it's like an option that we've never been given before. So it's like, how do we even look into this? Like, how do we even start? So I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's so important to, break it down, like you said, of like, well, what do you want to be present for throughout the day? Like, what's important to you? I always tell people, I'm like, what's your favorite workout class? Put that on your schedule. Like, make it a non-negotiable. It's just, it's so important. It's so new for people, which is, hard. This is like our first time that we've been given these choices.
Absolutely. And we need to do them, otherwise we're going to burn out and we're not going to be able to be, have a sustainable practice and be present for our kids and our family. But especially if you're coming from a 9 to 5 and that's like what you're used to, knowing that you can actually pick your schedule and you can, see 4 clients in a row, in the morning, maybe because that's like when you're feeling your best. And then you can have your lunch break or your workout and then see a couple clients right after that. And then you can pick your kids up from school still and be home the whole evening, if that works for you. And I think I've seen kids and teens so long in my practice that I always thought I needed to have all my spots or a lot of spots in the afternoon and evening. And I definitely did that in the beginning. And then now I have a 4-day work week. Like that's it. I have Fridays off, which is amazing. And I have to do it for my sanity. And then I have 2 afternoon spots, but I'm home by 5:30. And for me, that works. And then the other teens or kids that don't fit into those afternoon spots, a lot of people are doing different, alternative schools. And so they can come earlier in the day, or they have like a tutorial period if they're in high school and they can come during that and they can miss it. And so people will work around the schedule that you put out there is what I've found.
So important to hear from somebody, especially who works with children and teens, because I feel like that's such a sticking point of this fear that I will not get clients if I don't offer these afternoon and evening hours, even though I do not want to work afternoons and evenings. And I think you bring up such a good point. Like there is so many alternative schools that are happening. So many more kids are being homeschooled or going into part-time co-ops and schools. And I think that flexibility is there once giving people the choice of our time. We have to set that precedent of the time that we're available and not let other people choose it for us.
Yes, 100%. And even my adult clients, they're like, do you have anything after 5:30? That's when I can make it. And it's like, I don't, but I can do 4:30 at the latest. And then they realize, oh, okay, on Mondays, I can start a half hour early and then I can take my lunch at the end of the day and then they can get here at 4:30 and they make it work. I'm happy, they're happy, and it works for everyone,
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hearing time is a very important asset to protect. Do you feel like there's anything else that the therapist moms out there should be focusing on or leaning into protecting more?
Gosh, I think as moms and as therapists, right, we tend to put everyone else first. And it's just not only how we're programmed, it's how we're like biologically wired too, right? That's how our children survive. And so I think we tend to put ourselves last. And I talk to clients till I'm blue in the face about self-care and about how they're taking care of themselves, whether exercising, movement, getting a pedicure, a massage, whatever it might be. And it took me a while to like listen to my own encouragement.
Yes.
And so really like, what can you do each day for yourself? What does that look like? Workout class, great. Maybe just a walk during your lunch break, incredible. Going in and getting a pedicure or massage, fantastic. It doesn't have to be something huge each day, but just kind of like each day, what can you do for yourself? And then also what I like to do at the end of each day is how can I close the stress cycle? The day is so stressful, whether it be rushing kids off to school, clients in crisis, even if you've set your own schedule and everything feels really good, there's still stress. There's traffic, all the different things. And so what can you do at the end of the day to really close that cycle so your body and your brain and your nervous system feel as calm as it could be in that moment? And so whether that be breathing, movement, hot bath, a cold plunge, or whatever's working for you, is something that I think is incredible.
Can I ask, what does that look like for you? Or maybe what have you tried over the years that you feel like has worked really well?
I think each day is a little different, but sometimes it'll be like driving home with the windows rolled down, driving on the freeway with the music loud and just like belting a song. And something about that, I mean, obviously if we're belting a song and our windows are rolled down and we're like smiling and laughing, we're safe and our nervous system can feel like we're okay. And that definitely helps me feel more relaxed in a weird way at the end, And sometimes it's sitting in my car, just taking some deep breaths, doing a meditation. Other days I get home, I hug the kids, I hug my partner, and I'm like, I'm going to go take a hot bath, and I put all the essential oils in, I light the candles, and I do that. And then I can like enter into the kitchen and do dinner and do all the things. And so it's almost like just each day I check in with myself to see what I might need, but making it a priority.
And I hear a lot of sensory input things too, like really leaning into like the earthing, the grounding, leaning into like activating your senses. And like you said, reminding your nervous system that you're safe in whatever way that looks like.
Yes. Yeah. I've found that sensory input, not only will it be overstimulated with too much sensory like experience going on, whether it be loud noises or just a lot of people needing or touching, like that can be very overwhelming. But also what is very grounding for me is the sensory experiences too. That feels safe and comfortable for me.
So for a therapist who maybe is already in private practice and is expecting their first child or is going into private practice with a child or children, what is something that you would tell them or share with them or even validate for them in that process?
First, that it's hard, I mean, I think there's this myth that, being in private practice, it's so easy or it's got to be so great. You can make your own schedule. And yes, all those things are true. But when you have a child, whether you're getting ready to have a child or you have children in your private practice or you're going to start, it's a lot. And I think you can equate that to any job. Being a mom is the hardest job. So just like knowing that there's going to be some days where you feel like you're failing across the board and you're not, but you might be feeling that way and that's okay. And I think I would also really advise to find a community of therapist moms so that you can really talk about these things when they come up, because I felt very isolated when my kids were really young. I didn't have a lot of therapist friends who also had kids, and so they couldn't really relate. And so I really felt like I was in a silo just doing it myself, and that was really hard. So finding a community, knowing it's going to be hard, but knowing it's also worth it because you can leave, you can rearrange a client. Yesterday, my son had his 5th grade orientation and I was able to rearrange my afternoon so I could go and take him and be there and meet his teacher, and my clients were fine and they moved to different days and it worked out great. And so that flexibility is where it's at, but it's also hard.
I feel like that part is really important to name, that your experience, I should say our experience in private practice having kids, no matter the age, is going to be different than someone in private practice who has no kids. And I feel like people don't like to hear like that stark division, but it is so different to have these two really important parts of your life. Your business is, our babies. It's our business. We created this thing from the ground up. And then we have our actual babies who we have to care for morning, noon, night, and sometimes overnight. And it's so different to have to juggle these two very time consuming things that we love endlessly and cannot love enough. But like you're saying, to have to quickly rearrange your schedule. I've had to cancel my clients an hour before I start because we have to go to urgent care. Someone started throwing up before I have to start working. It never fails that like things happen and you feel, I know for me, I feel this certain type of, not like disappointment in myself, but I think like kind of like a failure. Like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling the kids are sick. I had to cancel my clients. We're just across the board. Things are not going well. And having that community, like you're saying, of people to be like, oh yeah, no, I've been there. It's fine. The clients are fine. The kids are going to be fine. You're in the trenches, but next week it's going to be a blip and you're going to be like right back to your schedule. But just hearing people that have been on the other side to give you that in those moments is so irreplaceable to have.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is so important. And I think also being really transparent with your clients, at least for me, I do work with a lot of moms as well, and a lot of dads, and even then obviously the kids that I work with, their parents. So, I talk about, obviously I have a 24-hour cancellation policy, but I also let them know that I might have to cancel an hour before, right? Or the day before with less than 24-hour notice because kids get sick and those things come up. And I think that clients really find a lot of like humanity in that. And for them, I always also let them know if they have to cancel, and this is for me, a personal preference, and some therapists might be like, I can't believe you do this. But for me, like that's how I don't feel that guilt, is if they have to cancel the day of because they're sick or their kid is sick, I don't charge them the full session fee because I also have to do that to them sometimes. And for me, that doesn't feel fair. I know other people do it differently and there's no shame in that. But I think, I am a very relational therapist in the session. And so for them, to know how human I am, just like they are, is part of just how I connect and how we do a lot of the healing that happens. So I think that part is really important too.
Absolutely gone through phases where, I was really sick during my last pregnancy and I was canceling a lot. And I think I felt similarly to you of like, well, who am I to charge a cancellation fee when, I've been sort of in and out of sessions over these last few months because I can't pull myself together here to get into session. And the clients are always so understanding, but I agree, coming especially from that relational lens of, this is a relationship at the end of the day, and we want to preserve and protect, and we also want to like be fair and equitous. And I think that having that level of understanding of this is the season of life that we're in, and we're working with others in that season of life too, which is a really cool experience to have. And to have that understanding, I think that it absolutely can work to be flexible with those things. It doesn't have to be so concrete and black and white.
And then I think that just helps us feel, at least for me, helps me feel better, just like nervous system wise, business wise, schedule wise, just to be able to have that flexibility and that understanding takes that pressure off of needing to like be that robot and be there and show up and, not be relational. Cause at least the type of therapist I am, I couldn't not be relational, and I would burn out. That would work for me.
If there was someone listening who is feeling like they're maybe just in survival mode right now, like truly just getting through day by day, like in parenting, in their work as a therapist in private practice, what is maybe the first step that you'd point them to start to come out on the other side of that?
That's a big question. And I think it definitely depends on the person, but like I would get curious about like what is causing them the most stress in their life. So like, is it their work? Like and if it's their work, then what can they change about that? Like, can they change their schedule, move things around? Can they, not take on another client? Can they, like I had said before, like rearrange the days so you have, clients that kind of flow together versus like 5 really hard cases back to back, if it is kind of a schedule, a piece, do they need to raise their rates because they just feel like they're, barely scraping by, and that is causing them to feel like they're in survival mode. Like really looking at that. If it's something within the family, what can they ask for help? Can their partner cook dinner? Can they maybe have a family member come help out or give some respite? Is their child having a hard time? What might they need support with? Do they need to get the school involved? I think it just kind of really depends. But identifying what the stressor is, because like if we're in survival mode, then we feel like there's a threat and we feel like, there's a lion outside of our door, but there's not. And so we need to really check in and figure out, where do we feel these threats, and then identify them really not as threats, and how can we manage them? Because you can manage every part of your life, but when it feels like it's all on top of you and kind of crashing down, it does feel like you're just in survival mode. And we need to let our bodies know that we're not in survival mode, because there is not a tiger chasing you, but it might feel that way. And so what parts and pieces can you kind of tease out and work out in order to minimize that feeling?
That is fantastic insight. And I hope anybody who's feeling in the trenches can kind of take inventory of that, because I think that is a great place to start.
And just as you use that analogy, I think that's perfect, right? Like when we're in the trenches, we're in it. So if I would invite people to step out of the trench and like stand on the edge of the trench and like look out and see like, okay, what are the threats? Like what is really getting me to feeling this? And then tackling each one of those. But we can't tackle them when we're in the trenches because we can't see them.
And get that community behind you, like you said, and be able to say like, hey, I'm in the trenches. I'm in the eye of the storm. What does it look like outside of this? And let people help pull you out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Kelsey, you have a brand new course and program. Tell us a little bit about it. Who was it built for? What is the sort of transformation that you're aiming for, and where can people find it?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited about this and excited to have this opportunity to talk about it. Back in May, so this is very new. I launched a new like social media Instagram page. It's called the Wholehearted Practice Collective, and I know you'll tag it on there so people can find it. Basically, it's geared towards therapist moms who want to start a private practice, but they don't know where to start. A lot of these moms are stuck in 9-to-5 agency jobs or county mental health, hospital jobs, school site positions. Some of them are like on maternity leave and they don't want to go back to their 9-to-5, and they've been dreaming about private practice, but they're scared and they don't know where to start, right? And the imposter syndrome creeps in, and, will I be able to make the paycheck? And can I find the clients? And I don't know anything about business. And you're right, like grad school taught us nothing about business. And I was telling someone the other day, I would never consider myself a businesswoman, but I guess I am, but it's just, we can do this. Like we can do hard things. What I've created is a online course that helps therapist moms from start to finish, like and how to build their private practice, how to grow it, how to find clients, how to make sustainable income and keep it sustainable. But above all, what we were talking about earlier, really starting the foundation is how to make it work around their life. And like, what life do they want? What schedule do they want? And then we build the practice. Like, what are their pillars? What are non-negotiables? Because I think so many new therapists start out, like we were saying, and they just hit the ground running and they take everyone and anyone and they're working crazy hours, and then you end up burning out. And so this course walks therapist moms through step by step how to do this. And so it's a self-paced online course, and there's going to be 4 modules. There might be another couple that I'm going to add in there. I'm still in the building stage. And with that comes daily support as well as weekly coaching calls. So it is a 6-month program, not necessarily because it's going to take 6 months for someone to build their practice, but because you really could start this course and still have your full-time, agency job, and you could start it and kind of start it in the background until then you're ready to fully launch, start to kind of get some clients before you want to go full-time. Everyone's going to be different. Some people are like, I'm ready right now, and they don't have a job, and so they're hitting the ground running. And so the weekly coaching calls are with me, but also the whole group of women. Right now, I'm working on filling the founding cohort of therapist moms. We're going to be there together every week and talking about what's working, what's not working, what you need support in, like sharing in the triumphs, and then also the stressors, and really finding and supporting each other in that way, as well as daily support with me on Slack, checking in with, different questions that might be coming up, business side or, networking side, like that kind of thing. And yeah, so it's really exciting and kind of like, I'm still have my full-time practice, but I've always loved to mentor and teach. Like I've said, I was the clinical director, but I've also been a clinical supervisor. And I love that piece, but I feel like there's so much more to give. And I feel like as we've been talking about this whole episode, like therapist moms, we could use that support and that help and just that community. And so that's what I've built.
I love that. How needed is that? And I'm so glad that somebody is out there like speaking directly to like that population of therapists and therapists going into private practice. So yes, that will all be linked in the show notes for everybody to check out.
Wonderful. And yeah, and I mean, I think some of the things I'm trying to get across now is just like building that community. And what I've been hearing from just an outpouring of therapist moms is like, oh my God, I feel heard. Like this is my life. Like no one ever talks about this, right? And we've just been talking about it. Just we go through the motions and we do it and we don't have the support. And so we are not alone, and we don't have to do it in isolation. Like you said, just because we can hold and do it all doesn't mean we need to do and hold it all, because we also have our breaking points, and that will happen if we do try to do that.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to see how it grows and how the first cohort does. I think it's going to be a really incredible experience for everyone.
Thank you. Me too. I can't wait.
Yay. Is there anything else that maybe we missed or that you wanted to add to the conversation?
Gosh, I would just say if you are a therapist mom and you're listening to this, I hope that you found some support just in hearing us dialogue about it. And both of us have this lived experience, and there's no cookie cutter right way to do this life in general, right? And then also building your practice. And for those of you that are like silently waiting in the wings for like the right time, like, can I do this? When's the right time? There's never going to be the right time, right? We just have to take the leap and do it. And I don't regret any of it. And I would never go back to a 9-to-5 unless I absolutely had to. And of course I would, right? Because as moms, we will do whatever we need to do. But that's not going to have to happen because the clients are always there. The need is there. We have a lot to offer our clients and the community.
Gosh, well, Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with us. I know there's so much for people the therapist moms especially, to take from this episode. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. Before I let you go for today, let me just tell you about a few things very quickly. If you are in the early stages of building your practice, like you're still figuring out the foundational stuff, the LLC, the rates, the systems, getting your first clients in the door, I have a course called The Complete Launch Kit, which is a step-by-step program with 65 lessons that walks you through everything in the right order so that you're not left piecing it together from 1,000 different places. It covers forming your business structure, setting your rates, getting your systems in place, building a basic marketing foundation, and seeing your very first client. If you are in that stage of practice building, that is the perfect place to start, and the link to join will be in the show notes. And if you already have a practice and your marketing just feels inconsistent, like you need to post, you should be blogging, your Psychology Today profile needs work, but you're not actually doing any of it because you just don't know where to start, that is what Therapist HQ Community is for. It's a private community for private practice therapists, and every single week you are going to get a marketing drop full of social media prompts and templates, blog post prompts and templates, and a community outreach idea with a template that you can actually implement in a short amount of time. Additionally, you will also receive access to my library of expert trainings. You will receive access to a website or directory audit from me and access to a custom AI sidekick built specifically for private practice marketing. And all of this is only $37 a month. That will be in the show notes as well if you are interested in joining. And as always, if this was helpful for you, I would love, love, love if you could leave a comment, subscribe, and share this with a therapist who also needs a weekly private practice pep talk. It is one of the best ways to get this in the hands of therapists who need it most. That's all for today, and I will see you next week.